I'm Susan Wingrove-Reed. I'm the principal keyboardist for the Anchorage Symphony Orchestra and also the education consultant. And welcome to our opening Prelude interview with our music director, Elizabeth Schulze. And by the way, our opening night concert this year is being sponsored by ConocoPhillips, so a big thank you to them. So Elizabeth, programming is like, I was thinking about this earlier, it's the curriculum for teachers who teach choir and band and orchestra classes. What am I going to teach through the music, and what message am I sending to our audience? And in a way, that's a little bit what it's like for a music director for a symphony, because it's our curriculum for the statements of the orchestra and what we want our audiences to experience. So one of the really important choices you have is, what do you do at opening night of a season? So take us through this process of how you decided on the program that we are going to experience.
Well, we had a pretty massive program at the end of the season.
Yes.
And I like to continue a thread at least. Sometimes it's a composer, sometimes it's a theme, sometimes it's a, instrumentalist or instrument all the way through from the end to the beginning, because people remember that and they want another hit of great music, right? And also, to begin a season, there has to be some moment of grandeur, some opportunity for the very best that an orchestra can, in terms of sound and communication, that the very best that the orchestra can give to its audience. And so in this case, there was no question. We finished last year with some of the grandeur of the Russian repertoire, and we're beginning again with Tchaikovsky and Rachmaninoff, two piano works, two very different works, different times in the composer's life, and different types of forms of music as well. But also, I'm thinking not only the beginning of the season, but what are we going to do all the way through? And there's a human aspect to this and a beyond human aspect to the season. And so I thought we should start with Fate.
Yes.
Which is, otherworldly and very personal and very emotional at the same time. And all of these composers that we are presenting are dealing with this, whether considering someone, as Carlos Simon does, he considers Beethoven's interaction with fate. But Carlos Simon's also interacting with fate and trying to depict fate, or at least the results, the emotional results of fate, and trying to bring that to the audience musically. So it's quite a challenge for him. And it's quite a wonderful 5-minute piece of music.
And he's a real up-and-coming African-American voice.
Yes.
But beyond that, just a human voice in music making. A real rising star.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And his music is being played all over the world. He is the composer in residence at the National Symphony in Washington, D.C. And a wonderful musician who embraces world music, but embraces all the styles, and brings aspects of jazz, of rock and roll, of gospel, his own, maybe, I don't know if it's his background, but his own interests in as he was growing up, and influences as he was growing up, to a real consideration of Beethoven's music.
Yes.
And each of these composers, now Carlos Simon isn't suffering as far as I know, but each of these composers had moments of self-doubt or wonder, real barriers. I mean, we know of Beethoven's, of course, both inner and physical and emotional. And Rachmaninoff, who was literally paralyzed, before the second piano concerto came out and was such a hit. And then, and Tchaikovsky, who suffered a great deal from inner turmoil always questioning. And each of these pieces deals with fate in a very different way, I thought. So, and then going forward throughout the season, we will hear the voice of Beethoven, the very human, beautiful voice in probably, I don't know if it's my favorite symphony, but it's pretty much near my favorite symphony, his Sixth Symphony. So we'll hear that after Carlos gives us a little bit of a tiny taste of Beethoven. We'll hear him later after a piece of John Luther Adams that discusses creation in the physical form, in the universe, the universe's creation, basically, the life of Earth in a way. I mean, it's just an incredible piece of music, but that continues through, and with other voices, and Brahms and Dvorak and Wagner, but again, a young woman considering Wagner. I like the fact that the composers of today, especially young composers, are looking back and having conversations with the great composers of the past, and bringing their own voices to it, and changing. I think it changes the program even when we look, when we consider the rest of the music. So setting up some interesting conversations.
Absolutely. And I'll look forward to talking with you as we go through this season about each of the upcoming concerts.
So that's how I plan our opening. It has to resonate with the rest of the season, but it also has to and resonate with the last season. Some kind of continuity. It's not always that way, but sometimes you'll have big clashing things. But usually the first concert is something to set us on the road to great musical success. And you can't go wrong with Tchaikovsky, because he wrote so well for orchestra, as did Rachmaninoff, and obviously Mr. Simon as well.
Well, one other thing I wanted to throw in about Carlos Simon was that he specifically references Beethoven's Seventh Symphony in this piece. Yes. So again, as you were saying, it's so interesting to look back, but yet put a new voice and new colors and explore.
Yes. And I find that so interesting, because I think a lot of people look at that slow movement of the Seventh as almost, some people do, I shouldn't say. It isn't the Third Symphony's, definite funeral march, but there's a sense of some sort of very formal and somber dance of some sort. I don't see it that way. I see it as a graceful dance, but a lot of people have seen the second movement of Beethoven's Seventh as something that's maybe dealing with fate, or maybe some sort of march towards something. So I don't completely disagree with him in that.
Sure.
And that's fine. That's what it's all about, isn't it? But yes, it is. It's his Seventh Symphony, not the Fifth, which is the knocking of fate. But we're not dealing with the knocking of fate. We're dealing with the fact that Beethoven himself mentions fate and fate's power over people's lives, and succumbing to fate, and just giving up to fate, or fighting against fate. So mentioning that
brilliant choice for opening for this concert, and then the fate theme.
Right.
Now with the Rachmaninoff, he had written 4 piano concertos, which are standards in the repertoire for any pianist. Yeah. But then there was this hiatus where he wasn't writing. He left Russia. Yeah. He ended up in the United States. It was 15 years after he'd written his 4th piano concerto that he wrote the Paganini Variations. Yeah. And although from everything I've read about him over the years, he was struggling, dreadfully homesick for the rest of his life for Russia, but a very inward-looking man.
Yes.
And he was able to purchase a house on a lake in Switzerland, which is where he wrote this particular work. And what I also just love about this is being able to now, and like at the pre-concert lecture when I'm preparing that, talking about the personality of Paganini and the influence Paganini had on Rachmaninoff and other classical composers.
Here's a composer considering another composer, or another artist. Certainly.
Another artist composer, which is what Rachmaninoff was.
Right. Exactly.
Sometimes we forget he was a towering pianist and a fantastic conductor. So triple threat. Yeah. And I've also enjoyed learning that his finger span he could reach a 12th on the pianos, which is why pianists are always pulling their hair out, getting through some of the virtuosic challenges of his writing.
Right.
But then that also can link to Paganini's virtuosity, which was unprecedented.
Who evidently had long limbs and long digits.
Long fingers and joints and all of these things. So, but the Paganini theme, it's just so well known, and then Brahms and others had explored, but then Rachmaninoff again visited this, and voila, it's amazing.
Yes, and then he also brings in the Dies Irae, and which is it's about the end of the world, in judgment, fate in some ways. And Rachmaninoff often brought that into some of his major works include that, but he's using it for Paganini, who some people during Paganini's life thought, this guy is so good, he's got to deal with the devil. He can't be this good. There's no, impossible that he could play this well, and that's another look, and it's kind of clever, I think. Rachmaninoff. Oh my goodness! It also was it not written? I mean, in a way, for everything that was going on after the revolution, all the people gone, and he was for him it was tragic what was going on.
Absolutely,
in Russia. And he missed his home, right? And
well, it was likely he would have been killed,
right,
if he had stayed. Yeah.
And at First World War, and then now the Second World War is sort of looming. It's not quite there, but it's looming. There's just a lot of foreboding there. So it's an interesting time for him to be in the United States and in Switzerland, missing home, making home around him as much as he could.
Yeah.
But there's another one, and it's filled with virtuosity for both the orchestra and. That's the good thing about it, is that it's so much fun for the orchestra to play this, because there's a real conversation.
Oh, yeah.
Between the two. Not that there isn't in others, of course, but this is fun. It's virtuosic for everybody. It's a show-off piece, and I love it.
Yes.
I love it.
And if someone hasn't experienced it live yet, this is your big chance, because recordings are amazing, but to hear it well played in person in a concert hall, whoa.
Yeah, and you certainly will with this young man. And of course the 18th, is it the 18th? Yes, I think it's the 18th variation, which is the one that he said, I wrote this for my agent.
Yes.
Well, that's the big romantic one that everyone knows, and it's the theme flipped upside down. Is it backwards too? But at least it's upside down instead of da 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 da. It's da 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 da, and you hear him just turn it upside down, and it turns into one of the most gorgeous themes ever written. Right?
Your heart just melts.
Yes. So. And he knew it. Yeah. I love it. I love it. That's for my agent, so I can get, he'll make money, I make money, we all make money.
We'll all make money, and our audiences will just love it.
Exactly right. He wasn't wrong.
So then we cap off with Tchaikovsky's Fifth. The fate motif that implants itself in every movement, and incredible orchestration and exploration, and the waltz influence of Tchaikovsky. We love his waltzes, and that is very much a presence in this piece. And so what do you love about the Fifth that you're excited to share?
Oh, it's so emotional. There is, when I was studying with a Russian, my Russian conducting teacher in graduate school, he told me that the sort of the Grove Dictionary, or the Russian version of a encyclopedia of music or dictionary of music, under Tchaikovsky, it was the greatest composer that ever lived after Bach and maybe Mozart or something like that. But literally, as far as the middle of the 20th century, Tchaikovsky was the pinnacle of Russian, composers. We all poo-poo, and we all, there's this and there's that, and there's Brahms and there's, all of these other things. But there's something about Tchaikovsky that is so direct, and so brilliant. I think that luckily we can reassess the fact that he didn't follow all the forms exactly, the Germanic forms that were sort of established by Brahms and others. That's okay. He had a different mission to reach out to his audiences in ways. I think he cared so much about what people thought.
Yes.
Which in some ways is tragic, but it also made his music very human and so beautiful, and it's so beautifully crafted. And it cannot take a lot of weight. It cannot take over sentimentality. It cannot take applying a lot of frosting and syrup to it. It has to be as straightforward, and then you get the romance. You get all the other the gestures that are romantic, I guess you would call it. That opening with the clarinets. It's almost operatic. He just is all drama.
Yes.
But he also is elegance, and he also knows grandeur. It's so interesting to me that the triumphant last movement, which is a take on the beginning, which is an ominous fate, as a kind of ominous, hanging around and scary in a way, or something. At the end, it's turned into sort of like Rachmaninoff turns it around. Tchaikovsky just puts it into a major and brings it into a kind of march of some sort, a royal march. Brahms thought that was the least successful movement, but in some ways, once again, we're talking about a whole journey through. It's very Beethovenian in a way. It's a journey from uncertainty to at least hopefulness, and that will be brought into the Sixth Symphony.
Yes, as we proceed.
Yeah. So, that whole journey. I think, for me, Tchaikovsky is this mixture of Mozart, in terms of just choosing the right notes and beauty of architecture in his phrasings. The reason why things are repeated, there is a reason for it. It needs balance.
There's a clarity that's Mozartian. Yeah.
Exactly. And yet at the same time, his experience is full of his heart, his soul, the Beethovenian romantic spirit, or, it's there as well. And then his love of the dance form, of the waltz. He became very, very good friends with the Waltz King, who brought Tchaikovsky to Germany, and then Tchaikovsky brought Strauss to Russia, and we forget that they were friends.
Yeah.
They weren't one-upmanship. They were just writing, forms. And of course, he's such a great Tchaikovsky's such a great composer for dance. How could he not write great waltzes? We know from Nutcracker and other things, but but it's a very intimate waltz in a way. It's super elegant, and it's a kind of, to me, interior kind of. It's just a brilliance of just silk strands, and the orchestration is so lovely and subtle. It's not quite as grand as some of the great waltzes that he writes for ballet. It's more interior, which I thought was beautiful.
Is set within the framework of the other movements.
And then the second movement, right?
Oh my goodness.
Which is another long soliloquy for horn, and it just is spun out so beautifully. To me, it's a perfect symphony. It's a perfect symphony for me. Sorry, Mr. Brahms. I like the last
Brahms
movement.
did like the first three movements a lot. And in fact, Tchaikovsky was really depressed, thinking he had a failure on his hands. But he said Brahms helped him. Yeah. But then he did, what the finale wasn't his favorite. But
that's okay. But there has to be this grandeur, this looking outward into the future, and also, he is in the midst of some of the most. Think of where he was living with those palaces and the aristocracy that he was part of, and the grandeur of that, and the expectation that a symphony composer is going to write something for the masses, and that of course carries on through Strauss, poor Shostakovich, others who got caught into you better write for the people, that kind of feeling. Tchaikovsky's doing that, to give a nod to the Tsar and all of the nobles, and to the traditions of Russian grandeur and the expectations.
But also grounded. I mean, he had moved into a new home. He was gardening and walking in the woods, which reminds me of how much Beethoven liked doing that. But I mean, he was connecting in a way that was bringing him some joy.
Absolutely.
That was new.
Yes.
And so
you get
there's
that.
this,
yes.
but there's also down to the earth.
For sure. Yeah, for sure.
So,
yeah.
Oh, I'm so excited
It's a great program, and it offers the orchestra great opportunities to show off their fantastic ability, and also to get started into playing, the meat and potatoes of orchestral literature. Really is important to get us going on that.
Exactly. And then the rest of the season, we keep going.
Right.
Well, Elizabeth, thank you so much for sharing your insights. Looking forward to opening night.
My pleasure.
And we will see you, and we appreciate very much your support of the Anchorage Symphony Orchestra, our hometown orchestra. So we'll see you in the concert hall. Thank you so much.